Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
Well, I guess this makes me internet famous then, since I'm going to be on a podcast now.
Yay! There's so much that goes with that.
Yeah. When do I get my first check?
Yeah, that's what I've been asking. Actually,
All right.
yesterday, I finally got a comment on my flat Earth video from a flat earther. I was like, oh no. And
they pop up in the weirdest places.
yeah, this dude was pretty convinced that the ice walls keep God out of Earth or something like that.
Huh.
I was like, oh, and so God knows that the politicians and the scientists know he's there, and he's like, just don't tell anybody, and I'll stay behind this ice wall, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. The whole flat Earth thing makes the least amount of sense to me of all the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Like, the only one I believe maybe a little bit less, but even then it's kind of plausible, is the whole, like, reptoid politician conspiracy theory. Because that seems a little bit more plausible than, the Earth is flat.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
no, I totally roll with politicians being reptoids. You know I'm all about that.
yeah.
Hi, welcome to Just Sick. I'm John.
I'm Daniel.
Yeah, happy to have you on.
Great to be here.
This week, we're going to be talking about quite a bit in quite a short amount of time. We're going to be talking about the Mandela Effect and simulated reality, sort of like video games, The Sims, stuff like that, and just trying to throw it all into a blender and see what comes out. So, how much do you know about the Mandela Effect?
Nothing at all until I looked it up last night.
Pretty wacky, huh?
Now, yeah, but the thing is, it's called the Mandela Effect because a lot of people thought that Mandela died in prison, and not that he actually went on to become the first black president of South Africa. I always knew that, like, it was just ingrained in me from history class and everything. What I didn't know is that, the whole Henry VIII with the turkey leg,
Yeah.
apparently that's not real, and I thought that was for the longest time.
Oh, there is a ton of these, and there's some of these that I was like, no, that was never a thing. The Mandela thing, I totally never thought he was dead till he actually died. There was never, I don't remember him dying in prison. I don't remember ever hearing he was dead. So, did you read where this was conceived? Pretty funny.
No, where, was it on Reddit, or,
No, it was at Dragon Con 2010.
That explains it.
Yeah. Oh.
But there's, like, mention of, like, parallel universes on the Snopes article, and that's interesting, but it's like a collective amnesia, It's the whole, like, Berenstein versus Berenstain Bears.
Right.
Everyone remembers it a certain way, but apparently, if you look it up now, it's not the way we all remember it. So what does that mean? That we all shifted into a different reality? Or that we're all just suffering from a collective amnesia? And it's confusing the more you think about it.
Sort of, but you got to remember that when you're remembering things, you are only remembering the last time you remembered them. So if you never spent any time really thinking about how Berenstain Bears was spelled, and then all of a sudden you find out it's Berenstain, you're going to think to yourself, well, I don't ever remember it being spelled that way. It has to be Berenstein. Like, how many people were looking at Berenstain Bears before this theory came out, and were like, okay, I'm just making sure it's E-I-N.
Yeah. Memory is a really interesting thing if you think about it, because you change your memory every time you recall it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this a few months ago because I remember the day 9/11 happened. I was in school, and I was in like 3rd or 4th grade, and the teacher got a phone call, and for the longest time, I thought I could remember seeing the towers from my classroom window. And that was like ingrained in me for the longest time. And then I went to go visit my old high school. My old grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And the view of, there's no view of Manhattan at all from the window. It's a view of Brooklyn. So I completely misremembered that for over a decade.
Wow, just a total false memory. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I think it's a collective memory, too, because, it's a New Yorker everyone asks you, where were you, like, on 9/11? What do you remember,
Right.
And I think part of us all want to have, like, a collective memory, that we really remember what happened that day. And I guess all of our memories sort of meld together in a way.
Right, I mean, other people's thoughts and memories can influence your own. There's never any real way of telling if the memory that you're having is 100% accurate. But that's pretty nuts that it was that far off.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the Mandela Effect, but I'm going to tell a real short story first. When I was a kid, I had The Empire Strikes Back for Nintendo, and there's a part at the very beginning where you're running and running and running, and you get to this wall, this ice wall, and I don't know if they forgot to fill in space or what the problem was, but there was a gap between the top of the TV and this ice wall, and it looked like space, and this is a game about space, and I am 7, so I'm like, I gotta get up there somehow. So I spent countless hours trying to get to a part of the game that wasn't there. In fact, like, there's this like force power you can get where you can jump higher, so I would go the whole way to like the end of the level, get it, come all the way back to this part that you didn't need to be to, and just stand there jumping and jumping and jumping, because I really wanted to know what was on the other side of that wall and what was in that space. So I only told that so that I could ask you, what do you think space is made of? Just the emptiness of space.
Well, mostly I would say dark matter and dark energy, because, and my sister could explain this more because she's into theoretical physics and all that, but if you look at the movement of galaxies in open space, in the expanding universe, they're moving very rapidly for what should be a lot of empty space between them. Now, that means that there's more mass in the galaxies than we initially thought, or there's something else in between the galaxies that we haven't found yet that's very heavy. It's causing a greater gravity field that's causing the expansion. And that's what scientists think dark matter and dark energy is. And that's the majority of the universe.
Yeah,
apparently.
Makes up. There's spots. I'm trying to think. I have one of them written down. The Buddhist void. It's 330 million light years in diameter, and there's almost nothing in it. It's called a super void. So there's just all this space where there's just nothing. And I'm sure you've heard of the many worlds interpretation.
Is this like alternate realities?
Yeah, it's the thing that Copenhagen came up with, where he said that particles can be in more than one state simultaneously.
Yeah, there's a really good book, fiction book called Two Graves by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, two of my favorite authors. And in it, the premise sounds really crazy. It's Nazi scientists survived the war, moved to Brazil, and start a genetic engineering program. And they breed this Nazi super soldier who's like a young 17-year-old kid who's a serial killer, and he can see 10 seconds into like the probable future. And the Nazi scientists who developed it used something called the Copenhagen window.
Okay.
And he can see likely scenarios that are going to happen in the future 10 seconds from now. And it's like looking through many windows, you know? You're not sure what's going to happen yet because the future isn't determined. But you can see where it's likely to go. And, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, so I think you told me about that book. I gotta find that. So my question is it possible that this is a situation where there are multiple realities that are somehow like kind of overlapping each other?
Huh. From my very limited understanding of string theory, yes. Because I think according to string theory, we live in one universe, which is like a soap bubble in a bathtub, and we're surrounded by infinite other soap bubble universes. And occasionally we'll rub up against another one, and the realities will merge and form a new reality from that new alternate universe. So, I mean, I think it's possible, but I don't know about the whole void thing being one, because it's just a huge unknown. Like, we don't know. Like,
Right.
Apparently it's empty, but what if it's dark matter? And how do you even measure dark matter? You know, because we don't even know what it is, really.
Right, and not only do we not know what it is, but that's our best guess as to what to explain what it is. That there is something there because of the mass, but we're not sure anything about it other than it might exist.
Yeah.
So if it's unobservable, I could see it. This is really stretching, but I could see it being like another universe. In that, have you ever played The Sims?
When I was young, I used to play it like Sim Safari, mostly like Zoo Tycoon games.
Ah, okay. Well, with like a video game, you can start from scratch, create, and then save that file, move to another file, start from scratch again, create, save that file. And there are people out there that believe that we're living in a simulated reality, I guess, which would be...
Yeah, Elon Musk is like a big proponent of this.
Oh yeah, he loves it.
Well, I don't like it, because, I like being an independent, flesh and blood being, and I don't like being thought of as, existing in a simulation. But when I listen to people discuss it, it does make a bit of sense. But here's my ultimate point: what does it matter?
Yeah,
Because
none of this would
I
really...
mean, there's nothing we can do about it to change it. If we do live in a simulated reality, there's nothing we can do, so we might as well just live out our lives. If we do, discover, the ultimate cause of it, we have 100% indisputable scientific proof that we do live in a simulated reality, what is everyone going to do?
They can't really change... You can't change anything. I mean, if you are living simulated, then you're still not able to do anything about it. I suppose if... like I said, I'm really reaching here, but I suppose if you were to find... Because I know that there are people looking for this, the code that runs the program, you could change it to your liking, but I mean, is anybody going to do that? I think if they find out they're in a simulated reality, they're just like, well, it explains why I go to work every day. And they're just going to keep going.
Yeah. I think it's also maybe an artifact of our current age of technological superiority, you could even say it, because look at how much we've advanced from 1900 to 1900 to 1920 was an amazing time of cars replacing horses and everything. Now look at what today, in 100 years, we've gone from not being able to fly to having commercial air travel. And now we have the internet, we have self-driving cars and all this other stuff. It's a huge technological leap that I don't think a lot of people, I mean, I know a lot of people aren't used to it and can't really adjust to it, because this is rapid technological change.
Right.
And I think it unnerves a lot of people, and people are looking for answers elsewhere. It's like, what if we live in a technological simulation? And, that does make sense if you look at the world around you today.
But I think you told me that you don't believe in a singularity, right? You don't believe we're going to reach a singularity?
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's highly unlikely. I think, I think the whole, electric car thing, renewable energy thing, it's not a gimmick, but but it can't support our current level of industrial civilization.
Well,
you can have solar power, you can have, wind power and all this stuff, but you can't support a current American lifestyle using renewables.
Well, as is currently constructed, you're right. I believe that. I believe that they could, improve it to maybe reach a point where they could sustain our way of life, but as is currently constructed, it could not work. You would have to do some sort of combination, at best.
The COP21 conference in Paris in late 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So Obama made us a signatory for that. This is the Paris Climate Conference.
Right.
And Trump, to much fanfare, pulled us out of it. And everyone is going crazy over this. But here's what I'm going to say on this.
Okay.
And you let me know what you think.
Cool.
It's a toothless agreement because it doesn't really bind any nation to stop the gases they're currently putting into the atmosphere. The only commitments any nation was willing to make amounted to slowing at some undetermined point in the future the rate at which the production of greenhouse pollutants is increasing. So in the real world, meanwhile, enough greenhouses have already been dumped into the atmosphere to send the world's climate reeling. The whole outcome of the conference, was just a big, circle jerk. Nothing really productive.
That's what I remember from it. Like, I remember people were there, and when it was over, people were like, well, nothing happened here. Nothing was accomplished.
And I was talking about this back in 2015, 2016 when it first signed. And is it good that Trump exited it? No. Is it good that it was created in the first place? No. It's virtue signaling. You hear about all this, social justice stuff in the news, virtue signaling. This is climate change virtue signaling.
Yep.
No one is really going to change anything. China is the biggest polluter right now in terms of, individual automobiles, and India is closing right behind, and America is right there in number 3,
Yeah.
For this whole climate change thing is really politicized, and the whole climate change movement has failed. Everyday people are saying, how could Trump do this? What I want to ask all the listeners is, what changes are you making in your own life
Bingo.
to prevent climate change?
Mm-hmm.
Because it starts at the local level. Politics starts at the local level. President Obama, President Trump, high up there in office are not going to affect your day-to-day life. Your local representatives are. So what are you doing to cut back on climate change? I personally don't drive. I live in a major city, so I have that luxury, and I cut back on energy costs wherever I can. What is everyone doing day to day to cut back on, global warming? People will virtue signal and still drive SUVs.
Exactly.
And commercial air travel is another big one. You have Leonardo DiCaprio flying halfway across the world in a private airline to get an award for his environmental awareness.
Oh my God.
How does that work?
That's a great question. Like, I don't see anybody who's going on to their social media and flipping out, then going out and riding their bike to work. It's just not how it works. Like, they're not thinking to themselves, well, now that Trump has gotten us out of this, I guess I have to drive my car. It's not...
Well, that's what I saw on Twitter, from some, conservative people. It's Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords. Now I'm going to, put the AC on full blast and, drive around in my Hummer that gets, 2 miles a gallon. It completely missing the point. And then the liberals are going crazy, too, and saying, doom the world is doomed. You know what? It's important to have government regulations to prevent greenhouse emissions, but it's also important for everyone to do their own part. Look at Jimmy Carter, and his malaise speech. There's a malaise creeping across America. High oil prices. So he suggested to everyone on national TV, in the winter, instead of raising the heat and using up precious fuel, wear a sweater. And what happened? He lost, Reagan won, and it was morning in America. Because people don't want to change.
Did you hear that, Cobra? Did you hear what happened? I hope you still love Reagan. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, actually, I kind of think that people love the idea that somebody could go in there, like a figurehead can go in there and screw things up, and it gives them an excuse to not take it upon themselves to do anything. Like, I think that's actually good for, well, it's not good for the world, but it's good for people who want to be lazy and don't want to do anything, but kind of also want to look good at the same time. Like, I'm really concerned, but I'm not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about the agreement, but I was not at all concerned when he pulled out, only because, like you said, back when it happened, nobody gave a shit. They were like, this is pointless, nothing was accomplished, we signed some stuff, nothing's gonna change. So every little thing that guy does, everything he does, just blows up. Just blows up.
Yeah. I remember there was this one, a few days ago, Trump's budget plan or something was announcing, paid maternity leave, an expanded paid maternity leave.
Yeah.
And it was a juxtaposition of 3 CNN articles, or 2. It was why we need paid maternity leave. And then after Trump announced it in his budget, why paid maternity leave is going to cripple the economy, or something like that. So no matter, that's the thing. And it's also a reason why I hate television news, because it goes so fast that you can't think for yourself. With newspapers, with online articles, you can read it at your own pace, and you can analyze what you're reading.
Right.
With television, you're just being spoon-fed whatever it is, and you're likely to agree with whatever's being said on it. And then you have all these talk shows going on where people just spew their own opinions, and you find yourself agreeing with them over time, or really disagreeing, and it's a dog and pony show.
Yeah, there's no information really to be found there other than what the topic is about. That's it. Now, what good it does, what bad it does, what the actual details are, they're not there. But you have 15 people in a matter of 3 or 4 hours coming on and telling how they feel, and if it happens to be against that particular network's feelings on the matter, they'll cut them off, which will make that person kind of seem like they don't know what they're talking about, or they're being rude, and you're like, oh, that person is rude, and that's what they think, so I disagree. Ugh, I can't watch the news. I think Entertainment Tonight, Entertainment Tonight does a better job with the news than the actual news does.
Well, this was a lot of fun.
This was awesome.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh yeah, anytime, man. If you ever want to come on, just let us know and we'll bring you on.
Yeah, let me know. And I enjoyed doing this. All right,
thanks.
Take care.
Bye.